Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I have my good friend Michael Sjogren with me. I've been on his podcast, and we often network in Clubhouse in the same rooms. If you haven't come across him yet, you certainly will, and I would definitely give him a follow. Building an incredible business out in the States on the short-term rental side, and we keep collaborating with these similar entrepreneurs to ourselves, and we were just talking backstage there about some of the pitfalls that we're having over the last 48 hours, or me especially. But and I think it's great that we all network in this way now. And I do think Clubhouse has brought us. I seem to talk about Clubhouse a lot on my podcast at the minute, but I feel like we've been pushed into this bubble of sort of a new network, and not only a national network, but an international network. And then you go into a short-term rental international network, and we all are doing it in so many different ways, but everybody has so much to offer, and it's amazing to see what everybody else is doing. So, Michael, I know we were jamming on Clubhouse the other day about your boutique hotels that you've got coming up, and that's something that I am in the space of doing as well, in terms of the apart hotel style model. So, let's take it back to the beginning, because a lot of my listeners are maybe at the beginning of their journey and just wanting to get going and looking for that keen start. How do they get into it? What should they expect? Where did it all start for you?
Yeah, so 3.5 years ago, I was working as an accountant. I did what everybody told me to do. I went to school, I got good grades, I got a quote unquote good job as an accountant, making decent money coming out of school. But then when my son was born, he was born with a rare lung disease. Basically, anytime he fell asleep, he needed to be on oxygen. And so we spent a lot of time at the hospital. And at one point, we'd been there for like 3 weeks straight. And all the doctors are coming in the morning, giving us their diagnoses or whatever. But the only thing I could think about was, I've been here 3 weeks straight. I'm all out of vacation time. I'm all out of sick time. I have all these hospital bills piling up, and I'm going to have to leave my baby and my wife here to go back to my desk to trade time for money. And I was so mad at myself for putting my family in that situation. I told my wife that day, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to build us a business that gives us the income we want without trading time for money. I knew real estate was the vehicle, because I'd met a lot of successful people that were generating good income, but I'm doing the math in my head. I was making a good salary. I'm like, I'm going to need a lot of apartments if I'm going to quit my job. But then I met a gentleman who was doing short-term rentals, and like the light bulb went off. And I was like, okay, like this makes sense. So we pulled a loan out of our 401k or retirement account. And I went and I bought a little 2-bedroom condo up in the mountains in New Hampshire. And my wife and I said, all right, we'll test this out, but we're going to make sure that we use it every single month as a family, and we'll rent it when we're not using it. I said, okay, deal. And just like that guy said, that property was netting us about $1,500 a month every single month. And I was like, sold. Like this is amazing. But at that point, I had run out of cash. So I was like, how else could I scale this up to add more units and increase my cash flow? So I didn't have enough money to even do a rental arbitrage play to go rent a unit and furnish it myself. So I started thinking about, what if I could find real estate investors with vacant units? And if I could pitch them this idea, if they furnish it, I'll manage it for them, and they'll have a lot more upside. And we'll do a 75-25 split. And I got a lot of no's. It wasn't easy to get that first yes, but once I kind of dialed in my pitch a little bit more, I got that first yes. And then within about a year from that first co-host deal, we're up to 15 different homes in 5 different states. And I was out of my job. My wife was out of her job, and I retired my mom. And it was like this crazy whirlwind over like a 12-month period, just like my entire world completely changed. And it didn't take a lot of units, which is like crazy.
Yeah, I think it can go very quick, this journey, and I think there's various levels, isn't there? I think, the get rich quick tag, it's certainly not a get rich quick, but if you want to hit that milestone of just getting out your job, you can do that first, and that's normally the milestone for everyone. But I think, a bit like yourself, I was kind of, trading a lot of time for money, and, just not seeing much of my family and things like that. And, I realized, there's got to be something more. And I was the same. I was like, there's something in common that a lot of wealthy people have, and is they all own property. So there's got to be something in this property game. But then I was, over in England, I was like, why would you spend 30K putting a down deposit and only getting 200 a month back? Like, that just didn't make sense to me. Because I was like, you need a lot of money. And then you start diving into these creative strategies, and you start figuring out that actually, you can take 4 figures out of a property if you do it right. And you don't always have to be putting the down payment down. And, it really just, as you say, that light bulb just goes off, doesn't it? And when it does go off, and then you're like, you're just possessed. You talk about all the no's there. I mean, I totaled up the other day. I've been on over 1,000 viewings in the last 3 years. So when people want to know what activity level you need to do to get to where the amount of units that you probably want, that's what I've done. And you're looking at probably a sort of 15-20% return on those viewings in terms of acquisitions. So, but that takes time to build. And I mean, what your story is incredible. I assume you spend a lot more time with your family now, and you're building out the systems and processes in your business. What would you say to somebody who is on the fence, who wanted to get started and is constantly getting those rejections? What changed for you? How did you manage to perfect that pitch?
Well, I think first off, you have to know why you want to start this business. There's a lot of ways to make money out there right now, right? So like, what is your end game with this business? I talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, I want 1,000 units. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, why? Like, what is the reason? Like, the problem is if your why isn't strong enough, when you start hitting those obstacles, you're going to be like, oh, this isn't worth it. Like, my why was so strong. Like, I was away from my kid. I'm like, I'll run through a brick wall to get this thing up and running. Like, there's no stopping me. As far as like perfecting the pitch, I was an accountant. I wasn't a sales guy. So I started studying sales a little bit and trying to figure out, all right, like, at the end of the day, sales, business, it's about problem solving. So what problems are these landlords having that I could solve, and what are their objections to it? So what do landlords or property owners care about? They want to get paid. They want their property taken care of, and they don't want any headaches. So how can I solve those problems through short-term rentals? And then especially when people hear the words Airbnb, short-term rentals, especially property owners, they immediately go to like party house. My place is going to get trashed, a lot of headaches. I don't want to deal with that. So I came up with this little credibility pack that kind of broke down all of our systems, how we, screen the guests, like our Wi-Fi lock systems, our cameras, noise sensors, all these different things to give them comfort that like we weren't just going to let stuff slide in their property and there wasn't going to be any shenanigans going on. And once they saw that, it was like, oh, wow, these guys have this pretty dialed in, like this makes sense. And I could show them actual data of other properties in the area, through sites like AirDNA or whatever, that, your neighbor is making 50 grand a year and you're making 24 on this long-term rental. So like, what are you doing? You're leaving all this money on the table. And so yeah. I personally liked working with investors. There's kind of 2 roads you can go with the co-hosting or the management model. Is like, you could focus on vacation homes, or you could focus on investors that have multiple properties. I tended to focus on the investors because it was a lot more numbers driven, and it was faster for me to scale because investors are always buying more property and they have friends that are always buying more property. So my business blew up pretty quick just through referrals. After I got really good results for a couple of people, it was just like referral, 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 referral. And then it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, it is the referral game. We were the same, where I did a deal for one portfolio landlord, and so they give you 1, and then they give you 2 and 3 and 4, and then that scales, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call off a friend, and it's like, so you're doing so and so for so and so. I've got a property about to come off a long-term let. Do you want to have a look at it, see if it works? And but you got to deliver on that, And I think what you're saying there about how you overcome the objections with the the packs and stuff, I think that's a great idea. In fact, I'm going to steal it because I'm currently recording a video brochure to send to estate agents and developers. So that's definitely getting added in. So, it is about, I say all the time, the 2 main things owners are going to be, they spend a lot of money getting these properties because they tend to do it the hard old school way of saving hard, buy one property, and then they're trying to rinse it, so They want to know that A, they're going to get paid every month because that's their main thing, and B, the property is going to get looked after. And I think if you can solve those two problems, then, and you can make them believe that you can solve those two problems, that's the main thing. And it is about the trust, because, you know, I know how many people are doing it over here in the UK, and whatever's happening in the UK, you probably times it by 20 and you get it in the States. So I imagine there's so many people setting up co-hosting businesses and management models and trying to go after all these properties. So, you know, it's about how we stand out from the crowd and how we make ourselves different. And, you know, it is an incredible model. How has your time on Clubhouse maybe changed your mindset around the business?
Well, like you were saying, I mean, it's just opened my network to just awesome people like you, like that I can like bounce different ideas off of now. Because before it kind of felt like a little bit of a closed circle where like I had a few people that were doing it. But it's definitely opened my eyes to a lot of different opportunities. You know, a lot of people are big on the car share stuff too, is kind of like an add-on. I haven't gone down that road yet, but you know, I've just networked with so many different people in the industry, you know, different strategies. From some people are focusing on, you know, the rental arbitrage, which is definitely the most popular, I would say. And then, you know, some folks are focusing more on the luxury vacation rentals and bringing in a lot of money doing that. Some more urban, some more suburban. You know, there's just so many different ways to skin the cat. And just when you see that, it's also like proof of concept for a lot of the newer folks that like, there's so many ways that you can become profitable in this business. You just got to decide that what's going to work best for you. And the more strategies that you learn, the more tools you have in your tool belt to get a deal closed. So like if somebody didn't want to do, like I was on a coaching call yesterday and the property owner for one of my students wasn't really too keen on the co-hosting or investing in the furniture. So he was trying to get the student to like go in on the furniture. And I'm like, then just pitch them an arbitrage deal. You just rent it and you furnish it and make all the upside. Like when you understand all the strategies, you can just close more deals.
Yeah. And I think it is about having a good mix as well, right? You've got your own investments, you've got your arbitrage deals or rent to rent as it's known in the UK. And then you've got your management model or co-hosting, you know, model that we've got. But there's no, I don't believe you should just do one. I think you should, as you say, have that armory in your toolbox. If you find a good deal, the rent to rent model is going to make you more upside than, you know, giving away. You know, we give away more than the 25% you keep on the management side of things. You know, that's the way the model works in the UK. So, you know, it's about having a good mix. And then how do you see the next you know, the next few years playing out for you and your business, and what's sort of the end goal?
Yeah. So for me, I still took on a few more management deals, but a lot of my focus now is, you know, like you, more on the ownership side. So like, where can I find some value add deals more on the commercial side? So like boutique hotels or apartment complexes, like 20 to 50 units that I can go in and acquire now that we've built up the cash flow from doing this strategy for so long, and build the equity and, you know, the net worth and the wealth from this business too. Like that's my primary focus right now.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the boutique hotel. So is that your first venture into multi-units?
So this is the second one. So we bought one last year. It's a 13 unit oceanfront, like beachfront. The location is unbelievable. But it needed a lot of work. You know, it was a second generation owner. They kind of let it go. They didn't really keep up with any of the upgrades. So we went in, spent a good amount of money, but we doubled the valuation on that property in like 8 months, you know, because we charge more on a nightly rate. Like he was charging anywhere from 120 to 180 a night. You know, we're at 350 to 500 a night. You know, we just completely repositioned that property. And then we implemented a lot of the technology from the short-term rentals. So like there's no front desk. It's all selfless, contactless check-in. We've positioned, if people need extra linens or towels or soaps or whatever, like we have supply closets strategically placed in the hotel that guests can just go grab whatever they need. So I don't need staff to go run around and take care of that. I've used my same cleaning teams from my short-term rentals to clean the hotel. So typical expense ratio on a hotel is like 65 to 70% because they have so much staff. We were operating at about 41%, we were at 41% in 2020. So when you increase the revenue and you decrease the expenses, commercial real estate's all valued based on how much cash it produces. So when you do that, it just forces the increase in the value. So this next one, it's a 22 unit that we're setting up now. Different style property. It's more like a true apart hotel where they have kitchens. They're basically like studios and one beds that we're targeting more like extended stays, business travelers. It's near a couple hospitals, a couple universities, more of a suburb of Boston. It's probably 40 minutes outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So it's not really a vacation-y spot, but there's other draws to that area. It's a little different demographic.
Yeah, and these type of deals, are you specifically looking for these things, or are they finding you now? And then how does the funding work on those in the States? Because over here we have to. There's various different ways to do development finance, but typically with the short-term rental model, you will only get a property valuation until you've been running it for several years, and then you will get the commercial valuation uplift should you wish to take it. Obviously, you don't have to, but typically we have to work on the property valuation from day one, which is a bit of a kicker, especially when you know your experience, you're going to get the results, and the uplift is a lot greater. But how does that is that different in the US? How does that typically play out?
So right now the lending environment's been pretty tight on the hotel side. Like a lot of lenders are like, I don't want to touch it. So we've been having a hard time refinancing it. So we've been shopping that out for the last couple months. And basically the message was like over the winter was like, hey, like we could do it, but you're going to get like a 55 to 60% loan to value on your cash out refi. So I'm like, no, I'd rather hold off. They're like, just hold off till the summer, maybe around June. And that once more vaccinations come out, which are pretty prevalent in the US. I actually just finished up getting mine last week. They'll have a little bit more appetite for it, but we're getting the valuations. It's just banks have been nervous to lend on it. But from what I'm seeing, it's, they wanted to see roughly at least like a 12-month P&L. So we opened in June of last year, did very well through the winter. Now they wanted to just see like a true 12-month P&L, and then we should be able to get a good refi. But on the second property to acquire it, the first one, we got seller financing on it, by the way. So got seller financing at 5%, 10-year term, 5-year term. Put a little bit less than 20% down, got to get a little creative with it, was able to close it faster than having to go through a bank. Again, find motivated sellers, like seller needed to sell. And then the second one, there was a new SBA, Small Business Association, or Small Business Administration loan program that was backed by the government. So basically the government guarantees like 50%. So the local bank only has to guarantee 50%. It was an interesting like new product. It had some loopholes that we had to jump through, but that's where we were able to get the financing on the 22 units.
Yeah. And I think that's where your team comes into play, right? Where you get, or your network, you start getting creative with, how can I buy this, $1 million building and turn it into $2 million, even if I've only got $100K in the bank account, I think a lot of people, and I was the same when I first started out. It's a case you don't know what you don't know, but when you do know it, you're like, damn, that is good, and I can use this and I can repeat that model time and time and time again, really blow things up. So, but you need people around you, you need partners, you need help, you need tax advice, you need, creative finance and good brokers. A good finance broker can get you a lot of places where, a lot of people can't and get those deals over the line. And, that's one thing that, I'm starting to really, see the fruition on is, with our exit strategy of short-term rentals, because the uplift is much greater than a standard long-term tenancy. We can go into these buildings that some people just can't make them work financially. The numbers don't stack on the back end because the revenue is too little for the amount that they've got to put in at the front end. But we know we can 2.5, 3 times that revenue per month, and then that comes back out quicker. So what money you might get stuck in the building tends to come out a lot quicker, and that makes then the project viable, right? So it's I always say to myself, and I've said this for the last few years now, I just know one day I'm going to own a hotel. I don't know why, but I just think that's the kind of journey that I feel like I'm getting sort of drawn towards. Do Do you feel the same? Do you feel like you've gone through your steps of, single dwellings, now in the sort of boutique apart hotel style? And do you feel that same, or do you feel like you might go a different direction?
100%. It's on my goals for this year. I wanted to buy one by the end of the year. Like it's on my goals. So right now we've just been, kind of setting some cash aside to position ourselves to, like I said, target something between 20 to 50 doors. I don't see myself buying a Marriott because I can't control that. And there's parameters I have to follow. But I definitely see myself buying, like I said, a 20 to 50 unit, like boutique or an apartment to just reposition and do this. Cause the upside is just crazy. And then you have the economies of scale. One thing I will say that I've noticed is you may make more cash flow per, like a single family home compared to a hotel room. You're going to make more on a single family home on a monthly basis. But when you take 20 of them and you have those economies of scale in one building, it makes it worth it. And you're able to force the appreciation much easier in a commercial building than in a residential building. Because if your property is bringing in $100,000 a year on a single family home, your neighbor just sold his house for 500,000 and you want to sell yours for $1 million, you're not going to get $1 million. I don't care how good your cash flow is. But on the commercial side, it's all based on cash flow.
Yeah. So obviously you and E have an amazing podcast, and you've got some great things going on over there. So just switch it up a bit. How do you guys get together? What inspired you to do what you're doing over there? And if you want to tell the listeners a bit about it.
Yeah. So my co-host Emmanuel Pani and I, we met in a mastermind group, more of a personal development mastermind group 4 or 5 years ago, and just hit it off. We just kind of really connected, became really close friends. He's been doing short-term rentals for about 10 years now. He's got a 40-unit complex that like cool rags to riches, like started as a maintenance guy. Now he owns the place, which is pretty sick. So he's got 40 units in South Florida, just north of Miami. Built up a real estate brokerage. He's got property management. He owns 100 apartments or something in the Midwest too. So he's done really well. And I was kicking around this idea of a podcast, and we actually had one a couple of years ago called Lunch Money, where we would do it every Friday at noon and just talk real estate, investing, just financial management, whatever. And it was fun, but we kind of just let it go. And then when I was kicking around the idea of doing one specifically on short-term rentals, we said, yeah, let's do it. And it's been a lot of fun. Again, just meeting guys like yourself, had some amazing guests on there. I learned something new all the time. Just business in general is all about your network. Like meeting good people, you can cross promote business, you get new opportunities coming your way. It's all about who you know. I mean, real estate, especially at a high level, is definitely an insider's game. So the opportunities that Ryan is getting, it's because he's been doing this for a bit and he's been building his network. Like that, I guarantee some of these opportunities are because of his network and his track record now. So same thing on my end.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, this isn't about bricks and mortar. This isn't about buildings. It is about your network and your relationships. I'm going to London next week to meet 2 guys that I spoke to on Clubhouse. Never met them before in my life personally, but I feel like they're really good friends now because we've had so much collaboration, both on Clubhouse, behind the scenes on WhatsApp, Zoom calls, and various other things. And we think there's a business between us that we can joint venture on, and there's many things like that keep coming out the woodwork, both nationally and internationally, and it is about getting yourself out there. And, I once got mentored by Grant Cardone in a masterclass format. And he once said, money follows attention. So, and that's kind of lived with me. And you just got to get yourself attention and get yourself in these right places, get yourself in the right network and put yourself out there a bit. And, as long as you're genuine and, you get on with people and you can have, great relationships, and everyone understands that, it's a win-win, and you're not trying to think, oh, well, if I go in a partnership, I'm going to lose 50%. It should be a case of like, if me and yourself went into partnership, I'm gaining 50%, but I'm also gaining what knowledge you've got that I don't. And I can learn that along the way, and vice versa, and ultimately we end up with a nice little business, and we have other businesses as well that serve us. And I think, if you look at most successful, Jeff Bezos, he has Amazon, right? But how many other businesses does he have through relationships he's built over the years, the networks he's built up, and he'll just be silent partners in quite a lot of them, I'd imagine. But he will have a lot of businesses. They're all the same, and I think if you look at your Donald Trumps, for example, probably not the best person to go in with someone from the States, but he has many businesses over the years, right? And he partners with a lot of people, and he networks in high places, and ultimately he got to become the president by doing that. If he didn't build his businesses, if he didn't network, he would not have been the president. So that just shows you how powerful your network is. How do you see? Has there been any fundamental changes in the States in the short-term rental space because of COVID? Or do you feel like it is just going to go back to normal once? I mean, I feel like here we are literally on the cusp of being back to normal, i.e. how it was operating sort of 2019, early stages of 2020, before COVID ever existed. I think a lot of people said, we've got to live with this new normal. There's going to be fundamental changes. But the more we go out of this lockdown phase, I do genuinely believe we are just going to go back to normal. Is that the same over there, or do you feel like there's been some fundamental changes that are going to stay forever?
No, I think we're getting there. I think honestly, we're going to have a hell of a summer. We're all going to make a bunch of money this summer because people have been pent up for a year and they're ready to get out. I know, especially some of my vacation properties, they're booked through September right now, literally booked, solid. So with rates, average nightly rates are up, occupancy's way up. I think we're going to do really well. I think it's just, again, paying attention to who you're letting into your properties, making sure you got all those security processes in place, monitoring different things. Had a call with some of my buddies over at NoiseAware, and they're just remember, just people have been pent up. They're going to want to get out and let loose a little bit. So just keep your eye on the ball a little bit. But I think we're heading in a good direction. There's a lot of pent up demand. What I see going forward is the bar is going to continue to be raised for what is the standard? What are the operating standards for short-term rental properties? I think gone are the days where, you could kind of get a property, buy some cheap used furniture, throw something together and make some good money. I think the bar has just been raised, and there's more and more professional style operators coming into this, that if you don't treat this like a business, you're going to get pushed out over the next 3 years.
I think a lot of people seem to be echoing that same thought, and not just, in the US, that seems to be across the board. I think it does appear, I mean, let's be honest, it was quite an easy game before COVID. You did just literally put it on Airbnb and make a bunch of money, and it was right, easy, let's go. But that's totally changed now. And as you say, people have leveled their game up because the operators that have stayed, there's fewer of us, but we're all operating at a much higher level because we're now playing with the professionals only, pretty much, because the ones who had it as a side gig, they maybe couldn't cash flow through COVID, so they give their units back. I think it's the businesses that have survived COVID as a large percentage, and those that treat it as a business naturally play at a higher level. So I think that's what's made the bar rise just naturally. I don't think anyone's sort of intentionally gone, right, we're now going to up our game across the board. I think it's just naturally the players that are left in are your NFL players. You've got no lower league players, and that's why I think the bar's been naturally raised. So, but I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it plays into our hands because we're already there. We're already doing it. So, and
I think it raises the credibility of the industry too.
Yeah.
The complaint in the past was always you don't really know what you're going to get when you book one of these, or they're just letting anybody in there and they're kind of the bad seed on the block or whatever. A lot of that's getting flushed right now.
And I mean, now you've got big hotel chains effectively shitting themselves because these Airbnbs. I mean, there's an article in Dubai last week or the week before, and in fact, I think you might have sent me it as well. But I know Chris sent me it. Everyone seems to send me it. But it was basically that the big hotel chains out there are now having to compete against the Airbnb units because people want that safer stay. People want that possibly, reduced price in terms of, the accommodation, even though it's not cheap out there, even the Airbnb units aren't. But they've also started now, some of the hotels like Jumeirah and Co., they're creating parts of their hotels now. They're actually remodeling into apartments. to try and compete with the Airbnbs, you know. So I think that in itself shows you possibly where the industry is moving a bit, and what the hoteliers are going to have to do to be able to maybe compete. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, people are still going to pay £750,000 a night and go and stay in the Burj Al Arab, and you know that's what they want, you know. But for the majority of people, you know, they might say, okay, well, we can get an apartment for £200 a night on the beach, or we can go and pay £400 a night and stay in a hotel. So you're still getting that luxury apartment, because the apartments that are kitted out nice, they are, you know, ready for that high level guest and that traveler, and it allows them to maybe stay a bit longer as well, you know. So rather than having a 7-day, you might have a 10-day holiday, because you can stay a bit longer. So I do think there's a bit of a shift going on. I think fortunately we're on the right side of the shift. I think it's coming our way a bit more, and I think there's a lot more. I know my apartment block that I'm doing is going to be running very similar to your boutique hotels, self check-ins, you know, all smart locks on the doors. So we don't really need to get involved in that, and reduce the human interaction and use technology to, as you say, keep the costs down and make more money.
100%. 100%. I'd be curious too, like thinking about unit mix, like you talked about competing with the hotels. Like if I have a 3-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom home that can sleep 10 or 12 people, those people will need to rent 3 or 4 hotel rooms. So I can still charge a good amount of money, and it's still going to be more cost effective than a hotel.
Yeah.
And they'll have the kitchen and everything else. They can do their own laundry, like whatever. So
yeah, I mean, it frustrates the hell out of me, because every time we go to Dubai, my wife wants to stay in the hotels, you know, and you're paying the big money, but you know, at the same time you're buying an experience, and the kids love it, and you got the pools and all that sort of stuff. But you know, it's some people they just want that sort of environment, I guess. But yeah, I mean, what we offer, the economies of scale is there, and that's why it works. That's why we see, you know, our apartments on a weekend in the cities, they get booked because, you know, 4, 5, 6 people will share the cost. We might charge £400 a night, but between 6 or 7 people, that's not that much. You know, they would pay the same to go and stay in a boxy room in a, you know, Travel Inn, a Holiday Express, or whatever it might be, a 2-3-star hotel. So it's a great model. And, you know, for anyone listening who hasn't got started yet, if you can get involved now, you're about to ride a storm for 6 months. You know, it's going to go, you know, crazy. But, you know, a lot of people do keep talking about the summer boom and this, that, and the other. But we forget that this is a business for decades, right? We're not just getting in this for the summer. And I think travel is going to be good for the next few years. I don't think it's just going to be the summer. I think we're going to get the rush of, hey, I've been nowhere for a year and a half, I'm definitely going out no matter what. But I do think it's going to continue, and I think this travel journey is going to be around for a while.
I agree. I think it'll trickle into the business stuff too, because even some of the folks like we've been meeting on Clubhouse, we're talking about doing some type of in-person mastermind event. And once this all clears up, I think there's going to be a lot more of those types of business conferences, different things like that, where people want to get out and connect again.
Yeah, 100%. I can't wait for that, to be fair. I mean, like we've all become like buddies really without ever meeting each other, you know. It's a strange sort of thing. And you know, the Clubhouse room that I speak on a morning, we've actually, you know, formed a bit of a company between us, and we're going to do an event in Cannes, and we're all going to meet each other next week for the first time. But I already feel like I know them all, you know. So it's not going to be like I don't feel it's going to be like a handshake, hi, nice to meet you. It's going to be like a sort of brother hug and be like, hey, how are you doing? But I've never actually met these people before, like in person. But I do feel like I know them, a bit like yourself, a bit like E, a bit like Bill, you know, everybody that we're talking, Julie, Mark, everyone, you know. So it's a great network. And I think whenever that event happens, you know, I think even if you've got to pay your way in, you do it because it's going to be great, you know. So, but yeah, I know you're a busy man, Michael, so I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. How can people reach yourself? What's the name of the podcast? Give that a plug so everyone can jump over, because it's an awesome podcast. I've been on it. So it's a great podcast. So I see the guests coming through, and you have some amazing guests.
Yeah, for sure. So the podcast is Short-Term Rental Secrets. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. It's all over the place. You can find me on Instagram at the Airbnb Guy. You can find me on Clubhouse. Ryan and I feel like we live on Clubhouse. It's at Michael Sjogren. We're on there quite a bit. Yeah, and my website, STR Secrets, like short-term rental, strsecrets.com. You can catch all the podcast videos on there. I've got a free 30-minute training on there. There's all sorts of goodies on there. So those are the best ways.
Awesome. Plenty to share and plenty of value if you want to get yourself over there. Michael, absolute pleasure as always. I will let you get off, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks.